What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is Austin Gentry. In this episode, you can expect to learn Austin's process to prepare for a period of creativity, how to turn your ideas into presentable topics, a 3-step framework for mentally processing a new concept, why your creative abilities are really just like a garden, and much more. Austin's been on staff at Second Baptist Church for the last 7 years, overseeing the young adults ministry. And he recently is now leading the Discipleship, all while writing churchwide Bible study curriculum. He has a passion for reaching out to young adults, and really he operates within a unique niche in church leadership in that way. A key concept for me in this first arc of the show is really trying to more effectively move between a big complex idea and a specific nuanced actual output. The strange middle ground between those two extremes is out of focus for me. And I think really developing those skills required to move in that space more quickly is going to be a long-term game changer for myself. And I hope that this conversation can kind of do that for you, that it can be inspiring for you to be more confident in pursuing your dreams. Enjoy. Glad to have you here. I'm excited to talk to you. The main thing that I'm curious to kind of dig into with you is this idea of really creating ideas. And the place I kind of want to start, just with whether it's your process or the way you think about it, is how to brainstorm ideas.
How to brainstorm ideas. You start with just thinking and about, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So first, my first step of thinking about a lot of things is probably getting a good night's sleep beforehand and having margin. Because if you're crammed and you're under pressure, sometimes that can work to its advantages. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. But no, seriously, like sleep, an opportunity to kind of zoom in, zoom out of things, all helps the thinking process, I would say. But when we talk about creating things, creation, everybody, because we're made in the image of God, has the capacity to create in some kind of measure. And so based upon how God's wired you, how he's wired me, how he's wired other people, we're going to create in different ways that reflect that. And so it's going to be a little bit, there's going to be nuances between the two or between the different types, but at the same time, there's some common threads that are equally applicable to all different fields of creation and thinking through processes all the way until your product or execution of idea, So
yeah, so you almost like that obviously the process of coming up with a good idea or like being ready for that kind of type of creation, like mindset almost. It starts way before you even want the idea to occur. Is that what you would kind of say?
Yeah, great way to frame it. I think so. I think most of the time certain ideas, they come from almost like having bubbled up from certain passions that you have or past experiences, or when you reframe a perspective in a certain way, or you go through a different experience with a new lens of perspective, then you begin to have ideas that you can begin to map out upon different approaches. So for me, being in pastoral ministry, it's easy for me to go about my day-to-day, go to the grocery store, watch a football game, see a reel that I think is funny, talk to a buddy, and I'm constantly mapping, oh, that's a connection I could use in a sermon, an illustration, or, oh, that's a good point that relates to this thing that I talked about 2 weeks ago, or, like it's like I already have a frame or a lens that's primed to receive data in a certain way and then to put it out in a way that reflects that nuance. So, but that's just because I'm in the pastoral ministry. So someone else is in IT or someone else is in chemistry or whatever. They're going to see and think about things in a different lens, if that makes sense. So I think lens is huge.
Sure.
Before you begin to thinking about ideas.
That's a really good point. And I want to dig deeper into that. Before we go too much further, just kind of explain a little bit who you are, what you do, just for people to kind of know you before we go really deep into these things.
Sure. Okay. So most people call me AG, kind of like Austin Green. Does anybody call you AG, by the way?
Honestly, no.
No
so
one?
You can keep
Okay.
that one.
All right, I'll keep it. There's another AG at the church. We both go to the same church, and there's another. Her name's Ashley Gunter, and she says that she's AG, so she calls me AG2. But she's the only one that calls me AG2. Everybody else calls me AG, so I'll let that be what it is. But when I came to Houston, I moved here from Charlotte almost 7 years ago. My roommate Kale just started calling me AG, and so then everybody started calling me AG. So that's just kind of how I became to be known. And so I didn't know if you had the same kind of nickname or anything. But yeah, so I came and started working at Second Baptist doing young single adult ministry. And I always had a passion for reaching people in our generation and in our culture. And the millennial mindset and the millennial culture is a unique one that comes with its own pros and cons. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt like, coming from a secular university, state university, and being in big city culture, I've just always had a passion to help a church reach that type of person that's in the city they might have some kind of religious background. They might have they probably do have a lot of deep and big questions that they don't have answered. They have some affiliation with the Bible, a lot of presuppositions about the Bible, and they're being constantly fed lots of noise in media and with we are a social media demographic. Like, we were here from the very beginning, and so we've kind of been weaned on what we've been fed, which is an entirely new experiment. Mm-hmm. And so I always had a passion to serve at a church with young adults. After college, when I went to seminary and I finished seminary, and people were like, "So what do you want to do? You want to be like a senior pastor?" And I was like, "At 26, I don't think so." They're like, "Do you want to be a youth pastor?" I'm like, "Not really." I don't know if that's for me either. So I was kind of just waiting on the right opportunity to present itself. And I don't think I'd ever really heard of like a young adults ministry role at a church that wasn't volunteer. And so when I was approached by Second Baptist about an opportunity that was a full-time gig, I was like, I think this is the on-ramp for me to kind of move into full-time ministry, which I had felt called to already. I was just kind of waiting for the right opportunity. And so I'm really thankful that the Lord brought me here, brought me at Second. It's been an incredible experience, and I've learned a lot in the process about pastoring, about creating things from ideas, sermons. I do a lot of the curriculum development. So I don't do young single adult ministry now. I just serve as like an associate pastor, discipleship pastor, where I'm kind of overseeing our teaching content, our midweek programming, Tuesday mornings like Ironman, like you go to, Wednesday nights, then teach on Sunday for a number of classes. And so it's a lot of writing, a lot of teaching, which I love. It kind of fits my how God's wired me and what I'm passionate about. And I'm never bored, so that's great.
That's kind of like almost the dream job, is to never be bored, right?
That's right.
So always kind of have something that is keeping your interest involved. So that's really cool. I'm curious how the I want to make sure I get how to phrase what I'm thinking just right, because it's such a nuanced thing when you're talking about brainstorming and coming up with an idea. Mm-hmm. I mean, the genesis of this question, me wanting to have this conversation with you, is watching you teach, and now knowing that you actually help create the curriculum for Second.
Yeah,
like that's astounding.
That's, thank you.
Like that's a lot of writing, a lot of thinking about, like, okay, how do we actually turn whatever it is, like the book of Numbers or the book of Psalms into, like, okay, lessons that are digestible, understandable, more or less easily explainable. And like, how can, myself and people watching take that kind of, I don't know, like
approach?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Like an approach to any idea they have whenever they want to create something, right? Because like you said, I think that spark to want to create things is innate. Like, totally. as we're made in the image of God, somebody has that, everybody has that feeling at some point. And so how do they actually, turn that into the thing that they are, designed to create?
So good. No, so that, yeah. I love, there's a book by John Mark Comer called, it's like Garden City. That's what it's called, Garden City. I read it maybe 10 years ago, and it was a life-changing book. Garden City. John Comer, if you're listening to this, we'd be honored, but shout 100%. Out. No, basically in the book, what he did was he reframed work in a way that I'd never considered it before. What he did was he brought us, the readers, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And he basically was saying the Garden of Eden is the place where God gave mankind, this is before sin, before the fall, he gave us all the raw material out there to create the world that he wanted us to create. And so in the garden, there is, and that's what kind of the garden represents, is raw material. It's like, it has a lot of potential. That's what a garden is. It has soil, it's fertile, but like you have to till it, and you have to, I don't know all the gardening words to do things. Clearly, I don't have a green thumb. But, you have to plant the seeds. You got to build the fences. You got to create in such a way that it'll sustain life. And how will it bless other people that are in the garden? And you got to watch out for, things that are going to tear down, or like entropy, which is natural. Things aren't going to become more organized. You have to organize it and till it. And so he kind of uses that as a microcosm of how all believers and all people are supposed to approach their work. So based upon the abilities God has given us, the affinities that God has given us, what's available to us, we want to take the raw material of whatever's out there and put together something that is creatively organized and digestible, like you said, and sustainable, and blesses other people in the process. And so for some people, their raw material, their Garden of Eden material that they're working with, is ones and zeros. They're coding things constantly. Computer language is that's their raw material. Other people, their raw material is Microsoft Excel. Like every number, not just ones and zeros, but 1 through 10 and everything else. And not 1 through 10, that's 1 to 0, 1 through 9. And they're using Microsoft Excel in such a way that is using a framework or a template to create organized, helpful accounting services of products or inventory. Someone else's raw material might be the human body. They're a doctor, so they're trying to put it back together and to sustain it and or organize it and to bless it in a certain way. Or a teacher, their raw material is children. They're trying to teach children how to grow up, like someone else would be trying to bring a plant up. And so for me, pastorally, I kind of think about my quote unquote raw material in two ways. One is the flock, which is like the people of God. And then two is teaching them the word of God. And so with the people of God, I want to make sure that people are, their needs are being met, they're being known, they're being plugged into community, they're being fed truth, they're being aware of lies, they're meeting people, they're becoming to their fullest, potential, all that God has called them to be, and trying to organize them in a way that brings about that same calling. And so in a similar way, the word of God, when I'm teaching or preaching, the raw material is all there. And the framework, the skeleton, the text is all there. I'm just trying to put it together with context and principles in a way that applies to someone else's life so that it's applicable for today. And so there's 3 different principles, I guess or processes with teaching or preaching when you're putting together like a message, which is basically interpretation. So as I'm reading it, it's like, what does this text mean? And then the next one is, excuse me, I'm getting this all wrong. What am I doing as a pastor? The first one is observation. So what does it say? Like what does it actually say as it is? So observe what's there. Number 2 is interpretation. What does it mean? So what does it mean in its own context? Sometimes you have to dig into some context to understand what the original author was trying to convey to his audience. So observation, interpretation, and then application. You're trying to bridge the divide between that context and our context today. And even you could add into that, try to look for inferences, try to look for connections, for patterns, things like that are going to resonate with us in a way that it's like, oh, that's what the author was saying back then. That's how that monument in Ephesus connects to the monuments I see in my culture. And what are the things that I make a monument to? So I mean, there's ways to do that, but the raw material is all there. And so in a similar way, that's how, to make a long answer short, basically, when we begin to approach life thinking about things in terms of raw material and then organizing it into an actual product, a rough idea to a sharp product is a process that involves a lot of different steps along the way. But I kind of like to think about it in that way. It's a garden, and we're tilling it towards a certain result.
I love that reframe, thinking of it as a garden, because it also kind of, it kind of breeds a mentality of like you have to care for it too.
Absolutely.
It's not just like raw materials to mess around with and try and shove together into something. It's important, and there's value in it that has to be cared for carefully. It's almost like like shepherding over it in a sense where it needs protection, but also is nothing without the worker to till it. That's a great reframe. I love it a lot. Do you think that this might be a bit of a stretch, so honestly I could be wrong, but do you think that like that observation, interpretation, application kind of framework works in any kind of application?
I think so. I think that's a great connection to make. I think so. When you're a doctor, right, you're going to observe what's going on. I'm going to make a diagnosis here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to try to interpret what that data means. So it's like my hand hurts. It's like, okay, well, why?
Yeah.
What's the root cause of that? It could be a lot of different reasons. So try to interpret what the data means and then apply what is now necessary for, what do we need to call for in light of what we observed and interpreted. So I think you can use that same framework for anything. I think.
I feel like it's probably pretty good.
It's a broad framework for sure.
It is. And I think at the very least, it's probably a great place to start because it would at least get your mind moving on like how you're going to progress through a problem. I like that a lot. Especially, turning it into 3 points. A lot of things come in threes, and so it's easier to remember in that way.
Yeah, totally.
I like that a lot. That's really cool. And so, you said John Mark Comer, Garden City is the book. That is officially on my list. That's cool.
Awesome.
I like that.
Highly recommend. He has a great voice too, so if you get the audiobook, it'll be...
I love a good audiobook.
Yeah, there you go.
Someone with a good recording voice. I love it.
Yeah.
So I've heard with scripture, like when we're reading it, because you kind of touched on maybe what the root of this question is a little bit. Would you say that there's truth in the saying that for at least some for some parts of scripture, that it's important to remember that it's written it's written to them but for us? Or maybe I might have it backwards, but I think I heard that maybe from Matt Chandler or somebody that did a sermon one time. I heard them say, but it's written to the people that it was written to.
Right.
So in some of the specificities of it, it's for them, but it's written for us, hence it being the word of God, that the nuances apply to us. Is that true? Am I missing something there? Or
no, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, even like I think the epistles, right? Like when Paul is writing to the certain churches, he's writing to those churches. Like he's not writing to you and to me, but the message is applicable to you and to me because, we're not in the first century of Colossae or Ephesus or Rome, and yet we live in cities that are very similar to those cities for the same reasons. And so therefore the same truths, the same principles, the same promises, they apply just as much. But understanding the context, I think, is extremely key towards really getting at the nuance of what he's saying. And that's where you find a lot of like a wealth of depth and how it connects. So I think even like in Revelation, John is writing to 7 different churches. He's like, here is a specific letter to each of the 7 churches. And so each church gets a different like exhortation or reprimand based upon what they're going through. And so when I read all 7 letters to the churches, which are relatively short, it's like, yeah, that's me for every day of the week,
Ooh, cool.
So, cause like we all are different. 7 days of the week, I can be 7 different people, 7 different struggles, 7 different approaches, frameworks, perspectives, ideas I'm struggling with. So each of them meet me in a certain way based upon the situation. And so, yeah, it's written, it's not written to us directly, but it's for us for sure.
Okay, that's cool. That's good. That's like very confirming.
And that's why that process of observation, interpretation, and application matters so much, because you're trying to get to the heart of like what the main message is. Because if we just skip straight to Paul's writing directly to me, you're not going to get the nuance of what he was saying exactly to somebody else, because it was all wrapped in a context. So if you take something out of the context, it kind of loses its power in a way.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting to think that it seems intuitively that if something's written to you, that would have the most meaning behind it.
Absolutely.
If it's for you to be reading in the time that you're living in, therefore it would have the most meaning. And I guess actually that explanation in itself kind of works through where I was wanting to go is if you think that it was written to you but it wasn't, you're going to miss stuff. And that's cool because I think that
you might get a shallow understanding, but not the whole
right. Yes,
depth of connection.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's actually really, really fascinating because it's a tricky little needle to thread, I guess, because like the Word of God is written for all of us, right? But to think that in a way it wasn't written to us that's like a really like a kind of a slippery way to think about it almost, because you can fall very easily into what's written to me.
And it's about me.
And it's about me. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So it's like
it's not about you.
All the specificities of it need the context. I love that frame because the context matters so much. And I think that it works really well as kind of a parallel to whenever you're trying to come up with maybe a lesson on something from the scripture, you're thinking about the context, like you said. But whenever you're trying to just create like a presentation at work, understanding like the context behind what you're being asked to do,
it's good, yeah.
Or if you're just creating an Excel spreadsheet, like you're talking about, where you're just looking at like a data set. It's like, okay, well, what is this in reference to? What is it actually talking about? Not just what do the numbers mean? I think as humans, the story behind anything we look at is so important. And I think we ignore that a lot in favor of just like, what's the data? What's the data? What's the data? Well, to me, numbers without a story are kind of meaningless. There has to be a story and there has to be context. And I think it's a good reminder, honestly, that even like the foundational Word of God, there's context to understand. So that is very cool.
Yeah.
And so kind of, weaving this path of my like learning journey through you and through other people that I talk to, something that is difficult for me is turning those abstract ideas, maybe even seemingly without context, into like a presentable concept. Because there's a lot. I mean, we can think scripturally. We can go in whatever direction maybe you think is a best example for how you think about like a really abstract idea being distilled into something concrete or more concrete. But that's kind of a thought that I've been walking through recently.
How to materialize the abstract into something concrete.
Right.
From concept to concrete.
100%.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, very good. Catchy. I think language is so important because we can speak in terms that are either highly philosophical and conceptual, or we can say the same things in colorful language, short, terse language, language that's digestible, simple. And I think there's, again, it's like, who's your audience? Who's gonna respect that, and not just respect it, but who's actually gonna understand it and apply it? And I think a lot of really effective communicators are those who aren't just let me tell you about a 200-page political policy that we can have reflected in the Middle East, and it's like, all right, buddy, I guess I'll buckle in and
Here we
get
go.
ready for your philosophizing. Or, you can listen to certain politicians, and they'll give you a four-word sentence that wraps it all up in one punch, and you're like, man, that was concrete. It was delivered with forcefulness. The language and the rhetoric was sharp and terse. And so I think, sometimes in order to present, as you're saying, concepts or things that just seemed very abstract into presentable, digestible lessons or stories or whatever, I think a lot of that boils down to the language that you use. Are you using language that is concrete, or are you using language that is more conceptual? One of my English teachers, which I hated English so much growing up, but now it's like, in God's humor, I'm using it every day for hours.
Hey, praise God! There you go.
Yeah. She would always say, like, don't write in passive tense. Passive tense is boring, and it's almost as if it's not like a part of what you're doing and thinking right now. And when people read passive tense, they're already kind of like, oh, that's not applicable. It's almost like a subconscious like reality. So when you're using passive tense, like, he was this, or that had happened, or they were doing blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say like when I say like he was running the other day or he ran, it's like, man, that like just changing the verb tense was way more forceful and engaging and active. So use an active present tense. I think that helps. But also, I mean, in terms of the words that you use, you can use conceptual words, theological words, or you can paint a picture. I'm trying to think of an idea. I could say, I just wrote like a curriculum on compromise, which like Balaam and the talking donkey from Numbers, if you're familiar with that one. It's a very crazy story. But, you could say things like compromise is when you are exchanging future blessings of God for momentary lies of the enemy. Or you could just say like compromise is like taking the money now instead of God's blessings later. You could like, I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But one is concrete and one is like out there, ethereal, conceptual. So anchoring language into concrete terms, I think, makes the point more forceful and more effective. And I think it makes it more presentable too.
It's like the power of, would you like maybe say like the power of a good example?
The power of a good example. Analogies, illustrations. If you're presenting and you have like a PowerPoint, sometimes people can just follow along better. Some pastors like to give out like a bulletin, like Ben Young does this for Sunday mornings, where like you can fill in the word as he's teaching. I think that's very effective for people because they're engaging with it in another sense. Not just sitting there listening. They're also watching and looking and writing. So when you can like combine more of those activities together, the senses together, I think the more effective it can be.
And I wonder where the balance is in that, of course, because like if you just have people like just doing something the entire time, then they're maybe not listening as well. Yeah. But where do you think the balance is in the language itself, and whenever if you don't really get those materials, if you are just going to be like just teaching or preaching or whatever it might be, how do you balance like the bouncing between examples, ideas, and coming back home to where your point is?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I think it's different for everybody. I know some pastors who they love props. Like every time they get on stage, there's something like a physical prop they have with them. That's not my style, but some people really like that. And it's weird because like when I think back to, I've listened to hundreds of sermons throughout my life, but I can remember the ones with props, whether the message was good or not. I still remember it, and that's kind of that. There's power in that, regardless if it's not my style. Well, I still remembered all the ones that I can remember the chocolate milk sermon that like one of my buddies preached in college, and I can remember like the sermon where a guy got his hand stuck in a vase and it was about temptation. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good note. I can just remember. So, I think props are helpful. I also like to, I manuscript out all of my messages so I can visually see the points, the flow, the scripture, the cross-referencing, and I want a balance as I'm teaching where it's not like 45 minutes of straight theology. And that's just a lot. It might not be wrong, but it's just a lot for other people to digest. And so it's like, okay, I've done a full page of theological explanation. It's time for an analogy. It's time for a story, or it's time for like a little quip or a funny comment here, just to like keep people like present and engaged. Because like, man, they're there on Sunday at 10 a.m. and they might have not gotten the best sleep, and they're probably distracted because there's other people in the classroom, and you just don't know. So I have to try to work with that as much as possible because there are things going against you. So I try to balance it out in my manuscript, and by manuscripting everything, I'm able to visually see what kind of cadence I loop principle, scripture, the exegesis. Exegesis is the term of like showing what is in scripture to everybody else. So not reading your own interpretation or your own like meaning into it, but pulling the meaning out of it. So I want to see exegesis in my manuscript. I want to see analogy. I want to see a little bit of a story. I want to see transition lines. I want to see my points in a way that visually makes sense in a balanced way so that people can stay engaged and attuned to what I'm saying. Because if I've lost people, then, maybe there's some good little one-liners here and there. But if I've lost them, it doesn't matter. You got to keep them engaged. So
Talk to me about the difference between preparing for a lesson where you're going to teach versus preparing like a written lesson or like a Bible study, because you've written a few Bible studies.
Yeah, good question. So the curriculums that I write for Second Baptist are basically like teaching tools that help people get a handle on the text who are teaching. So it'll be like a setting the stage, so providing a lot of context, background, providing some kind of like intro, some kind of hook. So that's typically like a story, an analogy, something to connect to the text, transition it into the actual exegesis. 3 points where you're dialing in like, okay, what does this part of the passage say? How does it apply? What does it say? What does it mean? How does it apply? Doing that observation, interpretation, application to all 3 points, and then concluding with like how does this all reflect Jesus? How does this all like point to the gospel and how we can live in it today? So that's what the curriculum is. Writing a curriculum is just not the same thing as writing a message, because no one wants to. A curriculum needs to be sharp. It needs to be like well written. It's just a different kind of like format. Whereas a message, a sermon, a presentation is going to be more colloquial, and it's going to be more conversational, and you want it to carry the same theological weight, but it's got to have a different flow and a different vibe altogether. So you don't want it to feel absolutely academic, because then people are boring. So they get bored. So they're completely different. And so sometimes like it almost pains me to write a curriculum, and then I go back and I'm like, I got to write another sermon. I got to write a sermon on the curriculum, because they're not the same. They're not going to be received the same. I can kind of pull some things out of it for sure. It's going to help me get going, but they're just going to be received entirely different. And then small like Bible study guides, those are kind of like questions, comments, commentary, that kind of stuff to help people move through their own personal study of a Bible or a book of the Bible, or like a group study of a book of the Bible. So that's how they all are different. So I don't know.
No,
just
that's
a lot
cool.
of writing. Yeah. So different. I'm trying to think of an analogy that would kind of connect to how that would be similar to another line of work. I don't know.
Well, we can come back to
Yeah.
it. If you think of something, just like
Say it.
yeah, honestly, just pipe in and say it, because I mean, honestly, what I don't want people to miss is, well, before that, the kind of the purpose of this podcast, at least for now, and I think it'll continue to be this way, but I want it to almost kind of be like somebody's first step, almost in like towards Christ or towards God. I'm in no position at this point to like give a sermon or really teach on the Bible, on Scripture, on any of that. I have enough understanding to know for myself, but not to fully share people. And so I want this to be like kind of a like peek in the door almost for people, where they can see that like, okay, Christians aren't a bunch of weirdos.
And there's weirdos everywhere.
Right.
And weirdos in every religion.
Yes,
and it's like,
yes.
and like, yeah, we got weirdos for sure.
100%.
Yeah. But
it's
Christianity itself is not weird.
Yes.
There are weird people who adopt it. Yeah, exactly.
But I want it to be kind of like a peek in the door almost, of like, even if at this point in your life you don't believe in anything, there's stuff that goes on here that you can learn that will improve your life at the very least. Just kind of like that nudge, if you will. Like that's what I want to provide to people at the very least, if not more. And it comes from like myself wanting that, honestly. Like in a way, this is minorly selfish, where like I want to learn these things, but I think that by me wanting to learn these things, that's indicative of somebody else wanting to learn these things too, most likely, or they just don't know and they didn't know they wanted to know. But the kind of the thesis is like, first of all, how does my mind work? How does the world around me work? And how can I know more about those things to improve those things? And so I think founding that in truth is, probably a pretty good idea. And so, just
Absolutely.
being able to like turn what some people might see as completely conceptual, to kind of use our analogy from a minute ago, into something a little more concrete of like that relationship. like with Christ or with God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at the very least, getting the lessons from that like and learning how they could be applied in someone with a secular mindset.
Totally.
Because I think if you can learn those things and apply them, you're at least moving in the right direction. And if your life gets better as a result of those things, it makes you more open.
And it will. I mean, your life will get better. So, I mean, There's there's several different kind of ways I like to approach that. One is, and I'm sure we've heard of this phrase before, is that all truth is God's truth. So whatever's true is true because it came from God. And whether Christians are saying it, or whether the scientific community is saying it, or whether the psychological community is saying it, or whether someone else is saying it, we can all hit on and find and discover truth. And that's like the whole idea of science, by the way, was science is a discipline undergirded on the philosophy that we can know things about the world and there is a design to things. That's what science is. So it's saying reality can be discovered. We can understand it. There is a pattern. There is a design. There is a study behind, and science just is unearthing that and putting the pieces together. And they're like, look, we found this this truth about like when you do this certain thing, like when you take a day off once a week, like it like resets your brain and like it like flushes out like and you become a better person. It's like healthy and the person's relationships are better and the relationship to their work is much better. And we're like, yeah. It's called Sabbath. Like we all know that. Like we've had that in the book and they're like just finding this. Oh no, look, there's psychological proof that that's because it's reflected in God's design. So I can't remember what philosopher said this, but he said, how did he say? Hold on one second. He said, when you go with the grain of the universe. So God designed things in a certain way. When you go with the grain, life is easier. It just makes sense because you're going according to the pattern of God's design. But when you go against God's design, when you go against the grain of the universe, so to speak, you're going to get splinters. Things aren't going to work out. You're going to get hurt. And it's like we know this intuitively. It's like when I follow God's commands and his design for how relationships work, it does work out, interestingly. When I find my identity in who he is and what he's done for me and what he says about me and not in what everyone else says and my accomplishments and what I think about myself, and actually find true peace and actually become more likable of a person because I'm no longer putting a pressure that's so transactionary on every single relationship to make me something that I think I need to be. It's like, no. When you live in light of God's design for your identity, it makes sense. It works. It's like, well, maybe it's because it's true, maybe that's why. Or so you can apply this in literally every capacity of life. But when you go with the grain of the universe, things are smooth and things work out. And some people are like, well, yeah, I mean, even if Christianity wasn't true, I'd still be a Christian. And Paul would say, no, that's ridiculous. But when you live the Christian life, it all makes sense. So, if the resurrection is true, and it is true, you're going to be living in a certain lane. It's going to be leading towards the grain. You're going to feel that life's not perfect. It's not easy. We still live in a broken world, but things are going to feel smoother, easier. It makes sense. There's going to be a logic to it. But when you throw it all away without Christ, without the resurrection, then there is no design, there is no hope, there is no forgiveness, there is no morality, there is no identity. Man, you're starting to spiral fast. And so Christ holds all of Christianity together, and without him, you don't have Christianity. But even when you follow the principles of Christianity in a non-believing way, you feel the resonance. You feel the like, this is working, this fits. There's something pragmatically significant here, and I don't know why. And we're like, it's Jesus. That's why. But I don't know why. But so there is resonance there, and I think Paul even writes about this in 1 Corinthians when he's talking about people who are married to a believer who aren't believers. And what Paul is saying is to the believer who's married to a non-believer, hey, you stay with your spouse even though they're not a believer because their association to you is going to put them in touch with the hope that we have. Like they're going to be in a close relationship to all these things that make life work. And all these things, we call it the covenant community. There's a lot of blessings on just being near or around or proximal to the covenant community of faith, you see those blessings and how life works when you're near it versus when you're just completely absent of it and oblivious to it. So, to the non-believer, it's like, yeah, I enjoy my Christian friends. They do actually care about me in a genuine, real way. It's like, yeah, like Jesus does,
That makes sense.
That makes sense. So there's a lot of internal logic there. And so hopefully, the more that non-believers can, I know sometimes from the outside looking in, it's like, there's some weird things about Christianity that just don't seem to make sense, but yet things still work. And there's some things, but when you join by faith, what happens is the inside looking out, you're like, it all makes sense. It's so clear. Like, I'm broken, but it's so clear, and it changes everything. And so that's kind of like the hope that we offered to people. That's the hope that Jesus gives us all. So,
amen. Well said.
Thank you.
Gosh, it's almost like you do this sometimes.
Sometimes, whenever they let me.
Whenever they let me. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's really cool. Talk about turning a concept into something concrete. That's fantastic. I'm actually really excited to listen to that again, because just that little bit is so good.
Oh, thanks, bro.
Yeah.
You doing the YouTube shorts, the reels, like little cuts?
Dude, reels? Okay, not yet, but I have started doing clips. Which is
what are
kinda
clips?
Fun. So it just like
TikTok?
No, not the vertical stuff. Just like I've been taking clips out of the videos to post separately.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah, clips. Okay. I didn't know. There's shorts, there's reels, there's.
I know.
What else? What are TikToks called? Or are they just called TikToks?
I guess it's just TikTok. I don't.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't use TikTok.
Frames? Is that what they're called? I don't know. On Twitter, they're called. It used to be Vine.
Oh, yeah, dude, it used to be Vine.
Vine. Yeah. So there's YouTube Shorts.
Instagram Reels. Is X also
Instagram
Reels? Or is it also short?
I don't know. What
Surely
X
all
is.
that's like copyrighted and stuff, so it'd be different. I don't really have a lot of social media, so
good for you. It's better that way. You're good. But yeah, I know a lot of like the little like 30-second reels and shorts and stuff. People like eat those up. They love them.
Oh yeah,
they're just easy to.
I should figure out how to turn this into that, because yeah, it's good.
There's apps on your phone that can do it, like AI, frame it vertically and then chop it up, cut it up, put the what are the captions on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that? You
no.
Okay.
I've thought about, one of my buddies is always like well, and you're not on social media, so you might not see this, but what's really popular now is for there to be like a 2-frame reel where you have someone watching someone else's reel.
Oh, really?
So it's like you can see like an actual like video on a screen, but then you can watch someone's reaction to it. So it's like a reaction video.
Oh, okay.
And so those are really popular, where like it'll be like a 15-second clip of someone's reel, and then the real reel that's enveloping it is someone's reaction to it and their commentary of it. And those are really popular. And I'm like, I want to do some stuff like that, because there's just so much stuff that's worth commenting on.
Yeah, that was very carefully said, and I like it. No, that is cool. I like the kind of frame of how all truth is God's truth. That is really cool, because it's like, even if you're living out, or even if you don't believe, but you're living out truth, then it would follow naturally that you'll likely be better. That's a really good, like, succinct way to tie it all together. Yeah. So all writers, all people that create things, you hit blocks. You hit creative blocks. How do you deal with that?
Let's go back to the garden, right? So we're in the garden. When you're trying to plant something, there's a big rock in the ground. You're like, how do I get that rock out of the ground? So we all hit blocks, whether you're a writer or whether you're a creator. Something's going to happen where you're like, I don't feel motivated. I feel like I don't have a good flow in my thoughts. I feel like I've been like dialed in so much that I've lost the whole meaning of whatever I'm trying to do at this point. So I think there's several different ways that you can eliminate the blocks when they come, because they will. It's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of will. And I think one of the first principles, I think, is how you start. So sometimes people, they feel the block from the very beginning, and it's like, I don't feel inspiration right now, or I don't feel like I have enough information right now, or I don't feel like I have. And so from the very beginning, just getting started is the hardest part. Or I feel like I have to start perfectly. So I think my biggest like practical advice for that block at the start is just go. Just do it anyway. Just get started. Well, I don't feel inspired. Do it anyway. Because
something.
just do something. Get the ball rolling. Because as soon as you get the ball rolling, I promise you inspiration will come as you write. So one of the things that's helped me with like sermon writing and just writing in general is I'm not trying to make it perfect from the start. I'm just trying to get the ball going. And as soon as you can get the ball going, if I give myself 20 minutes, just 20 minutes, no distractions, put your phone on the other side of the room, 20 minutes, lock in, and just try to put stuff on paper. And then once you start just putting stuff on paper, then things begin to start connecting. And then you begin to get the flow. And then you begin to, I didn't think about that. And then, wow, after 20 minutes, you're like already in the flow state. You're like, wow, I felt horrible sitting down. And now I'm like, wow, that was amazing. That doesn't happen every time. But I think just getting going is important. I've heard it said before, sometimes we frame how we start things with ready, set, go. He's like, really what you need to do is go, set, ready. Just invert it. Because when you do that, what happens is you're saying, I'm going right now, not for perfection, but momentum. And if I'm staying in the ready, set phase for too long, I'm never going to go. Because there's always something to ready. There's always something to set. Sometimes you just need to go and figure out the ready and the set part after you've already gotten the ball going. So that's my first principle, I think, with when you find a block at the very beginning. If you find a block in the middle, I would say, okay, sometimes you've been working hard, you've been focused really, intently into this one page that you've been writing, this one project that you've been doing. Sometimes what you need to do is just take a step back and reframe your perspective, and maybe sometimes even press reset on how you're relating to it in general. One of the stories that I think is so profound, or like a principle that applies here, is Winston Churchill during World War, II? One.
That'd be two.
Two, thank you. Winston Churchill during World War II, I heard, and I can't quote it in this book, but I heard that from like 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. every day, he would not do anything related to wartime strategy, politics, anything. Mind you, this is like the most important thing he could ever do, is to be locked in on strategy, mobilizing, resourcing, funding. Everything is war. So what he would do between 2 and 5 p.m. every day is he would pause on his role as commander-in-chief, over everything, and he would go to his basement and he would paint for 3 hours. He would paint.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. And he had a passion for painting. And in painting, what he was doing was he was resetting his mind, because from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., it was all about tactics, strategy, war. It was everything. So after 9 hours straight of that, for 3 hours, he would just breathe. His mind had been clenched for so long, and now he's letting his brain just kind of like release a little bit. And so what he found is that after just 3 hours of doing nothing, of painting, of talking with his wife and kids, he'd get back to his work after dinner, and then he would see the map in a completely new way. He'd see something that he missed before. Like, oh, that's a connection that I should have made this morning, but I didn't. But now I can see it because you can gain perspective when you take a step back and then come back to it. You see things you didn't see before. So I think sometimes that same principle works with our work too. If we're just locked in constantly, we're clenched constantly thinking about a certain thing, sometimes we do a disservice to ourselves because we're not seeing it in, like our word has been during this time, context. You're missing the context. You're missing things that you could have noticed along the way that you're just oblivious to because you're just so locked into one thing. So taking a step back, I think, helps. And so with writing, similarly, I'll do the same thing. If I've done 2 hours and I'm like, I feel like I'm hitting a wall, I feel like I'm not making new connections, I feel like the words are just coming out slowly or they're just not sounding good, I'm like, I just got to stop. I got to go to dinner. I got to go on a walk. I got to go call a friend, something, and get back to it later. But yeah, don't wait for the flow. Don't wait for the things to just always make sense. Sometimes just plow forward into it. Sometimes take a step back before doing it again. So those are two of my advices when the quote unquote block comes, whether it's at the beginning or in the middle.
Yeah. So how do you talk to me a little bit more about the timing of it? Is it very planned, or is it kind of reactionary whenever you're feeling? How do you manage the timing on a, day-to-day basis versus longer term, stuff like that?
For sermon writing or just other writing or just in general? Because sometimes I would say it changes based upon schedule.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess if it is different, kind of dig a little bit on both for me.
Okay. So it depends. So we do Tuesday morning Ironman, 6:30 in the morning on Tuesdays. There are weeks where I'm teaching on Sunday, and then I have Monday to prep for Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, if I got 2 back-to-back in 36 hours, that means I should start working on both of them 5 to 7 days beforehand, both of them at the same time, so that I'm not approaching a blank screen, a blank canvas on Monday afternoon for Tuesday.
Right.
It's just not going to be my best at that point.
I think most people would agree. 12 hours is not enough.
I don't think so. Yeah. So I think planning in advance is helpful. Again, just putting stuff on paper, creating an outline several days before, a week or 2 before, as you begin to think about it. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, and you're like, well, Lord, this is what I have. Mm-hmm. I need you to make the best of what I have, and I need this to be good enough. And sometimes good enough is good enough, because it's all you have to offer. Mm-hmm. So with things like with teaching on Sunday, teaching on Tuesday, teaching on Wednesday, trying to make sure I have at least a week to begin to think about, plan, outline, add in principles is key. I will say one of the things that has really revolutionized the way that I continue to work is my notes app on my phone. I love the notes app. So
talk to me about that.
So I have a notes app for basically everything. I have, I think, 540 notes apps on my app right now.
540.
Yeah. So on all different things you can possibly think of. So when I start the process and I say, okay, I'm teaching on 1 Samuel 18 3 weeks from now, I'll have a file notes app with 1 Samuel 18 and notes. And I'll begin to think, okay, I got 8 verses in this passage. What am I beginning to see or connect or outline in this? Now, I'm not going to write my sermon on that notes app, but it's basically just a blank canvas for me to just, like, if I'm in the elevator and an idea hits me, I can write it down real fast, and it's saved and it syncs to my computer, so I can just throw it on a Word file later. The what is it called? Files on your phone? The blue folder?
Yeah,
Files. I love files for iCloud because I can just access anything and everything with a couple clicks for all my like messages or documents or anything. I can pull out like my mosquito spray bill from 3 years ago in the right file, so it's pretty cool. So I would say during the week, having an outline, having a foundation, having a basis is helpful a week or so in advance. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the week, trying to fill in the gap, trying to create and understand where there's puzzle pieces and how they connect together is helpful. And then creating little tags or ideas or whatever along the way as the thoughts come. If I'm on a run or on a walk or I'm talking on the phone with a friend or something happens, I can just populate it in my notes app. It'll sync and I can throw that on the Word file later just to make the process more efficient.
Okay, so giving yourself like a week or more if you have it to be ready for that, especially if there's more than one in a short period back to back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how does that's kind of for sermons, for teaching like that. How does that differ from a more long-term approach?
Yeah. So like if I'm working on a book or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's these things called deadlines that authors hate. Most times, publishers will give an author, you have 18 months from start to finish, get everything done, all your deliverables in. Mm-hmm. That 18 months is necessary because the deadline basically, and with anything with work projects, you can pick something to death trying to make it perfect. But I think as soon as something is about 80% good, I say send it. Because the reality is, if you spend 20 hours on 80% of that thing, you're going to spend another 40 hours on the next 20% making it perfect. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just don't have that time. Like we live in a real life with real demands, with real time blockers, and we just can't. So I think trying to get something done 80% of the way 85% of the way and sending it off to your publisher, developer, editor, whatever, for them to kind of sharpen up the rest of it and then get back to you and y'all can work together, I think is helpful because it doesn't put a ton of pressure on you of it's either perfect or bust. It's be a good steward, be faithful, and turn it in. Because something can always become better or more refined. I mean, always. You can pick at something to death. Like a sermon is not done until you deliver it. Literally. It's not done until you deliver it. And then once it's delivered, it's like, I can still pick on like my manuscript and like make it a little bit sharper for the next time. And I do that. But at some point, it's like you just have to give it, you know. But with books, with writing stuff, I've only self-published up to this point, and so that has been on my own time, just getting it done when I can. So, sometimes I'm doing that on Saturday mornings in front of a football game, just like beginning to kind of move the needle a little bit more and more. But also, my buddies and I have been doing this all year long, which I've loved, and it's so nerdy and geeky. But when you have other buddies to like do this with, it's just awesome. So on Monday nights, I think every Monday night this year, maybe barring a couple situations, we do this thing called Monday Night Grind, where we just go to a coffee shop from 7 to 10 or 11 p.m. on Monday and just grind on other projects that are not work-related. So other personal projects, other personal passion projects. It could be budgeting or finance, or if you're trying to get a new project off the ground. Or one of my buddies who's into drones, he like got his whole drone license done during that time, taking all the tests, studying.
Wow.
So I mean, if you add that up over the course of the year, 4 hours a week more, and we're 30 weeks into the year, dude, that's 120 hours on one project. That you can't, that doesn't come out of nowhere. You have to plan it into your week. You have to make it a routine. One guy I know, his name's Clayton King. He's a pastor out in South Carolina of New Spring Church. He's from North Carolina. And I think I was reading how does this guy like produce so many books? Like, he's so prolific, and he's like a leader of a mega church. I mean, he's talking at all these conferences. I mean, how do you get done what he gets done? And I think he said for a number of years, every day from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., those 3 hours a day were his like writing blocks where he would just write all day long. Gary Thomas. Do you remember Gary Thomas?
I never had a chance to meet him, but we have Sacred Marriage.
Okay, so he was on staff at Second for 11 and a half years. He would do the same thing. He would wake up at like 5 and write until like 8 or 4 to 8, something crazy. But he'd do all of his writing early in the morning, and then after that he'd like go crush a marathon and then do something. And I'm like, dude, like I'm just waking up. I'm like with my coffee, and you're like, yeah, I published a 15-page report and ran 7 miles. And I'm like, all right, dude, like this isn't motivating. This is just backbreaking at this point. Like I'm never going to measure up to that. But the people who I think are successful are those who they work on that project, not occasionally. They work on it frequently and routinely. And it doesn't matter if it's high quality hours or not, they're just getting the hours in. And by the time that we've tried to stack up our perfect quality hours versus their just grind hours, dude, there's no, you can't compete. That's kind of like how Kobe Bryant approached like his work ethic in the gym. He's like, no one has ever put more hours in than me. So I already know by the time that we step on the court, I'm better. Like, they don't have enough hours to beat me. And it's just like, that's the Mamba mentality.
There you go.
So that works for some people. For some people, it annoys them, but it is what it is. It's hard to argue with hours.
Yeah, it's like consistency beats perfection every time.
I think so, yeah.
Because you can't achieve perfection. I was talking to Jeff a couple weeks ago, and a really, really cool point that we hit on is that nuance in between perfection and excellence, where one of those is attainable. Yeah. And the first one is literally impossible. Like, you can never, ever be perfect at something. And so if you set that as your goal to like, okay, these hours that I'm going to work on this book are going to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to have the perfect music in my headphones. I'm going to have the perfect cup of coffee next to me. It's like, well, okay.
No distractions. I'm going to be in perfect flow from the moment I start.
Exactly.
Not going to happen.
It's like, it's impossible. And so if your focus is, I mean, depending on where your bar is for excellence, maybe the focus is even just not on excellence, but just good enough, like we mentioned before.
80%, 80-20.
80-20, which I love that law.
80 plus 20 is perfect. So I'd say 80 is right at excellent, or 85 is excellent,
Yeah. It's like the consistency beats the perfection every time.
I think so, yeah.
I wonder too, it would seem to follow that when you have a high bar of consistency where you're just getting the hours in, those hours naturally get better too.
I think so. Absolutely.
Just like a natural process of refinement. As the more you do it, the better you get. And so the faster you can do more, the better you'll get.
That's right. It's kind of like the 10,000 hour rule, if you've heard that.
Yes.
From Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think it's tipping point or outliers.
I think outliers.
Okay. Yeah, but the idea being
both, maybe.
Or both, yeah. Meaning, if you clock in those 10,000 hours before other people clock in those 10,000 hours, you're going to be very likely ahead of that person. I don't know if this is Tim Tebow's comment or not, but he's always like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, I love that. I'm like, let's go. Because he'll tell you, he's like, I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the best arm. I'm not the best. He's like, but I will outwork everybody, with the Tim Tebow spirit that he has.
Dude, there's nothing like a Tim Tebow speech to get
you
going.
I love it. But it's true, though. And that's not to encourage workaholism, or it's not to encourage, like, making work a god, but it is to encourage be excellent, be faithful, be a good steward, be intentional and diligent about your work. Don't just go through life feeling sloppish and lazy and aimless and like your work doesn't matter. Have a goal, have a target, have a project that you're working on that you're passionate about, and lean into it. And you'll find, again, as we talk about resonance, purpose. It's like, maybe God made me for this. Like, I feel a connection here that is almost like transcendent, and it's a cool feeling when you feel invested in that way, because it's you're using who you're supposed to be for the purposes that God made you to carry out for the good of other people and for ultimately His glory. And so that's where we want to be, like, pushing ourselves into that trajectory, and I think that's where you find a lot of fulfillment and peace and happiness, in that kind of work.
It's a good reminder with the fulfillment and the peace in those places. You mentioned before about the Winston Churchill story with his painting, which I love that. Which,
can we buy one of those paintings? That'd be awesome.
Dude, I want to see a Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's any good, but like I'm interested to see it.
Yeah, even if they sucked, I'm sure they would sell them for a lot of money.
Oh, I mean, that guy with his signature. I mean,
yeah.
But with that kind of frame of the really, like, strategic hard work and then pulling back, I heard a kind of a cool. There's not like a quote that I remember, but the idea of operating in liminal states, kind of referring to that time period, like the flow, kind of.
Wait, what is liminal?
So I could not define that word for you if I tried, but I can kind of paint a picture about it. Didn't mean for that to.
Got it. Fun. There you go. Nice.
Cool. But anyway. The first context I heard of this in was with Albert Einstein, and I think somebody else did a similar thing. But he would sit in his armchair and would hold his keys or something, like a fork maybe, in his hand, lean back in the armchair with his arms kind of out, with a metal pan under his hand, so that right as he was falling asleep and his hand loosened its grip on the keys, they would fall and rattle and wake him up, and he'd be in that kind of weird space right after you wake up, and you're not fully, like, ready to do an integral, but you're at that weird spot, right? That's kind of what a liminal state would be like. And so it almost seems like where you're able to pull back a little bit, like the Winston Churchill, like that story, like pulling into like a, not almost like a halfway dreamlike state, but just like a, like, not fully locked in.
So his theory was, if I can get into that dream state, there's creativity there that isn't in my non-dream state.
I think so.
That was his theory?
I think so. And that might be total crock of crap. But
But you never know.
but I think that there feels like there's a little bit of something real in there.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to take a nap at work and be like, no, I'm trying to get into my flow state. Like, this is for your good. Like, just let me take a nap. Yeah.
Trust me, Albert
Trust
Einstein
me.
did this.
I will get my curriculum done faster this way, and it'll be better if you just let me take a 30-minute nap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that, like, the pulling back is almost like a light version of that, where maybe you're not like halfway asleep,
Right.
but you're able to kind of see a broader perspective of the thing that you're working on.
Your brain is certainly resetting at minimum in that liminal state, if that's how I say it. Liminal,
Yeah.
Liminal.
I'll look up the definition at a different time.
Okay, cool.
But I think that it's just something about like being like that relaxation maybe has something to do with it, where you're not just like driving.
Right.
You just kind of like it's I don't know, like a full just kind of setback.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a Sabbath for the mind.
Ooh, I like
You
that.
know?
Okay.
You're pulling in the Sabbath, the
Mhm.
power of the Sabbath into
Yeah.
your day, you know. Or
Maybe a different conversation
moment.
for a different time could be the kind of parallel between Sabbath and sleep, in a way, of like the recovery and dreams to an extent, maybe. But a different conversation for a different time. The last thing I want to ask you about is I think it's actually perfect that the way you touched on it earlier, because it leads right into it, is you talked about whenever you get blocks right at the beginning of something and how really you just need to go and start. And then when you have blocks in the middle of something, how like working through that, like we just said, stepping back and giving yourself maybe some time, or looking to see the broader picture a little better. How do you help, or yourself? How do you work through it yourself, or help people if they're struggling through it finish?
How do you finish well? Good question. You know, I think it almost teeters on our same conversation of like 80%, 20%, going for excellence, not perfection, having deadlines that are going to hold you accountable. How do you finish? I think one of the things that is probably an underrated category for finishing well is looping people into your journey, because people are a natural feedback loop, and two, they are a like built-in system of accountability. So they're going to ask you, like I have friends who are asking me like, hey, how's that project going? Like, what's the process on it? Hey, what do you think about like this with your oh yeah, right, I should maybe include that. Or like looping other people in, I think it creates responsibility, it creates accountability, it creates a sense of responsibility even, because you don't want to fail them. So I think that's helpful, at least in terms of continuing to get to that finish line. I think deadlines for sure, self-imposed deadlines are important. Without deadlines, without a way to finish, I don't think we ever will. Because again, there's always something to pick at. There's always something to quote make better. Always. I think that's important for finishing. And then I think another one, I want to say this because I think it's related to finishing, but it's almost like a step back to the start in a way too.
Send it.
Is okay. So I think that there is this myth or this lie that we subconsciously believe that like once we finish, then like that's where the euphoria is, or that's where like the dopamine shot is, or that's where like the sense of accomplishment or fulfillment is. And that's a lie. I don't believe that at all, because you hear this all the time from people who they finish building their house and they're like, what's next? Or they get the gold medal and they're like, now what? Or they win a Super Bowl ring and they're like, I hit the pinnacle, and it's like it almost didn't quite do the like what, am I missing something? So what I think is God made us to build and to create, not just to finish. So God didn't make us to just finish projects. He made us to keep creating. Like we are creators. And once the job is done or the project is done, our calling isn't done. We're called to continue to build and to create. And so it's like, hey, I just finished this book. Awesome. Like what can I write on next? Like the joy wasn't in the completion process. The joy was the process. The joy was the journey. It was the grind. That was the fun part. And when you can tap into, I think, that ethos of like this, the calling itself, the work itself is the goal, not the end product. That's when you can tap into, I think, a like your extra gear of motivation. Because, if you're only shooting for the finish line, what you're saying to yourself is the finish line, the end result was the end, and the work was the means to an end. It's like, no. Biblically, the work isn't a means to an end. I mean, in a way it is, but the work is itself an end. It is itself good in and of itself. And so sometimes I think when we approach that finish line, we can almost feel a little bit of like there's something detaching here. There's something like dissociating here. It's like I want to keep working because that's who God made me to be and what he called me to do. So it's the work is a present active thing. It shouldn't just end right when the finish line ends. And if it does, we'll feel a drop off, I think. Not just emotionally or physically, but I think spiritually we'll feel that in our souls. Like, wait, I'm supposed to keep working. I think it's kind of interesting. I've heard other pastors say this, and I don't think this is biblical or I don't think like this is gospel truth, but they'll say like, hey, retirement's not in the Bible. And it's like, you're right, it's not in the Bible. That's a very westernized, Americanized concept. And that's not saying that retirement is sinful, and of course not. But the idea being is that God made us to work. God didn't make us to just work for a little bit and then just spend the rest of our days on the beach. Because if you do that, you're going to be pretty unfulfilled. Like we all have work that we can be doing. There's going to be different work for different seasons of life, but as long as we're still working, we keep our humanity, because part of what it means to be human is to work and to contribute. That's what keeps you living. And as soon as you don't have a purpose, as soon as you stop working, you kind of start dying in a way. And so as believers, we're supposed to be bastions of work, because work in and of itself is glorious. It was before the fall, not after the fall. It wasn't a plan B. It was plan A. So you can tap into really the goodness of work right from the start.
Austin Gentry, ladies and gentlemen. Dude, that was phenomenal.
Thanks, bro.
That was really cool. I really appreciated having you.
Yeah, of course. That time flew by. I can't believe it's 5 o'clock.
It's crazy. This has happened every time so far. And so, I mean, that was phenomenal. And what a good point to end on. I think so far the theme has really been like, we end up ending on kind of this like hopeful theme. And I don't know, it's encouraging to me moving forward in this project, in this kind of season that I'm in, trying this thing, where like there is hope moving forward. But yeah, this has been really cool. You're amazing. You're fantastic.
Great. Oh, dude, thanks for having me. This is a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I'm super impressed by all the all the gadgets and everything. I'm like, this is sick.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a minute if you want to. I know you have some resources, so plug your stuff, man. Tell people about where they can find what you're working on.
So about 8 years ago now, which is crazy to say. 8 years ago, I wrote my first book, 10 Things Every Christian Should Know for College. Mm-hmm. So if you know somebody who's going to college, is about to go to college, in college currently, would love to send my book to them in some kind of capacity. It's on Amazon. Then I've done 2 other like small group Bible studies or personal in-depth Bible studies through the books of Hebrews and Nehemiah. Those are basically just like, I wrote those because my small group had gone through like each of those books like 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, man, I have so much content on these 2 books, and I just want to make it available to other dudes who are just interested in Bible study. And I don't know if you feel this way. I feel this way. Whenever I go onto Amazon or I look online for like Bible studies, what I see or what it seems like is just a lot of like feminine content and feminine curriculum wrapped in serif fonts and pinks and pales and pastels, and I'm just like, I don't want to be seen with that. Like, you know what I mean?
Calling out the serif fonts.
It's true, yeah. Like, give me that Avenir strong, bold, yeah. But I was like, I want to create something that a guy like me would have in his hands and enjoy reading, and I want it to be high quality content, paper, print. I want it to feel masculine. And typically when something's masculine and if it's not overly masculine, it's just like base masculine, girls will read it too, for sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work in reverse. Guys don't pick up anything that looks remotely feminine. So if you market to the guys, like the middle guys, not like the ultra masculine, like, you'll get the whole, demographic. And so So I'm working on another one on the book of Ezra. Similarly, like I think my small group has done that book like 2 or 3 times over the last 3 years. It's connected to Nehemiah anyway, so I was like, this is just a natural fit. Let's do that one too. So I'm working on that one. One of my big passion projects that I've been steadily working on for about 8 years also is a devotional on Psalm 23. So Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Yeah, favorite passage of scripture for many people. And back in this is crazy. Back in 2016, going into 2017, my mentor back in North Carolina, he said, "Hey, what are you doing for your like spiritual disciplines, quiet time in 2017?" And I was like, "I don't know, I don't really have a plan." And he's like, "Well, how about this? How about you pick one book of the Bible or one chapter of the Bible and spend the whole year in that one book or one chapter?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, every time I wake up in the morning, I'll know what to read,
Yeah.
So it makes it easy. And he's like, "Yeah, do that for the whole year." And I was like, okay. So he's like, "Think about it and get back with me." So as I was thinking about it, I was like, man, like, I feel like I'm going to be kind of bored after January reading the same book over and over and over. And also like Isaiah or something, or one chapter over and over and over again. I was like, this is going to be, I need a text that feels like it can be equally resonant, at least every single day. I need a text that feels like it has a lot of content written about it to keep me occupied all throughout the year. So I was like, Psalm 23 has got to have like a ton of stuff. So I literally bought every book on Amazon on Psalm 23. I believe I bought all of them. And there wasn't as many as I thought, actually. But I tried to get my hands on every single bit of content, curriculum, Bible study, book, anything written by a rabbi, written by a pastor, all of it. I want all of it. And so I just kind of through the whole year kept this running archive of little nuances or principles. And like we talked about at the beginning, context matters so much because we live in a modern society where we're familiar with like highways and bayous, not streams and pastures. And so because of that, I was like, I need to just steep myself in this context for a while. And so that journey that started in 2017 continued to carry on in the following years, almost weekly. Not like as intently, but almost every week coming back to it or finding a little like reel or a video or a whatever from a pastor or a sermon that like connected back to Psalm 23 that I would take note of on a notes app or something. And then so as I've been compiling a lot of information and whatnot since then and writing different like chapters, I was just kind of getting jaded about the direction of it. I was like, this just doesn't feel like this is it. And so I kind of took a break of it for a good while, but I still kept collecting information. And my mom at Christmas was like, "Where are you at in the Psalm 23 project?" Just to tie up all the loose ends, like bring people into your projects because they'll hold you accountable to it. And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. And I feel like this is where I'm going, but I don't really like this direction. And she just kind of was like very matter of fact with me. And she was like, "Austin, like people who love Psalm 23 don't love it for the academic nature of it, though I'm sure there is a lot of academic nature to Psalm 23 as with any part of the Bible, but people love Psalm 23 because it speaks to their heart. It speaks to their emotions. It speaks to what they're feeling at the time. They can't read, like people that are going through grief like Psalm 23, people that are going through transitions and heartbreak and brokenness, like they like Psalm 23. So if that's your audience, like we're tying up all the circles, right? Like all the loose ends, making a full circle.
Love it.
If that's the audience, then you need to frame it in such a way that meets them where they're at. I'm like, that's a good point. And she's like, why don't you just make like a devotional of Psalm 23 where they have like a little something digestible, a page or 2 pages for like every day. So don't make it like a daily devotional for all 365 days, but do like a 100-day devotional where you have like 100 different devotions all the way through Psalm 23 that pull out a nuance or an insight that they might not have been familiar with otherwise and bring it back to how it applies to their life. So how I've been structuring this devotional is every day I'm trying to look for observation. What does it say? Interpretation. Okay, what does it mean based on the context? And then application. Okay, how do I apply it to that specific person and what they're going through? So I've been kind of steadily working on that. I'm about 30 in. So about 33% done of a 100 100-day devotional. I think I'm gonna do 99 days. Get it like the 99 and the 1.
Okay.
The sheet.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So anyway, that's the direction I'm trying to move in that direction when I have time, Monday night grind time.
Yeah.
To try to work on it slowly and steadily.
Yeah.
So
all,
it's been a
all
passion
those
project.
the Bible studies and the book on Amazon.
All on Amazon, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, dude, I appreciate you being here. This is
my
been great,
pleasure.
and I'm
Thank you
excited
so
to
much.
Let's do it again. So thanks.
Let's do it again.